people say DSLR these days, it generally means a camera that has an image sensor greater than an inch, such as the popular APS-C and full-frame sensors. Also, where you have the ability to swap out the lenses. We'll be using the Samsung NX300M with an APS-C sized sensor. It has a DxO Mark score of 76, putting it alongside the Canon 80D and the Panasonic GH4. All photos are shot handheld unless noted. Alright, let's start with the most common and challenging scenario. Indoor photography. This room has a fairly standard 150 to 180 watt incandescent equivalent light source. The NX300 colors are more accurate, portraying the cool light source. The iPhone renders the photo in a warm yellow light, which it seems to have a tendency to do. You can see it's fairly noisy even at this moderately lit level, but it's still sharp enough to read the text. The new portrait mode is great, but using it indoors is another story. The image becomes extremely noisy, indicating the second sensor is also in action. Just remember, you'll need a lot of light to get good results from portrait mode. One thing to note, portrait mode is limited to blurring out only the item behind your subject. You can't blur out something in front of your object, like you can here with the DSLR. To make the zoom test even, the NX300 was set down from 20 to 10 megapixels, bringing it in line with the iPhone 7's 12 megapixel sensor. From 2 feet away, you can still make out the text from the 10 megapixel NX300 image. Surprisingly, the iPhone's larger 12 megapixel image, zoomed 2 times to use the telelens, is very blurry from only 1.5 feet away. What's going on? It turns out the telelens is not being used. The low light ability of that sensor is so bad the iPhone just doesn't use it and resorts to a digital zoom. Okay, now deeper into the rabbit hole. This scene is lit with an equivalent of 2 to 3 candle lights. The iPhone and NX300 were both set on the table. As you can see, the main sensor in the iPhone does a pretty decent job considering how dark the scene is. It's noisy but still somewhat usable. However, when comparing to the APS-C sensor, it's no match. Now on to more positive scenes, the bright outdoors. The NX300 on the left resolves a bit more detail, but at this point I think most people would not be able to tell the difference. Looking at more of the image, most people would still probably say it's the same. So in well-lit scenes, you're getting DSLR equivalent quality images, which is amazing from such a small sensor on the iPhone. Moving on to video, this is just a quick 1080p comparison. A more detailed 4K comparison will be another video. The iPhone seems to do a lot of processing, making up for its small sensor. Here it massively boosts the contrast. It didn't look like this in real life. Notice how much smoother the iPhone footage is, but the iPhone does crop the frame considerably to get it that smooth. The iPhone continues with the high contrasty mode and renders the green leaves with a harsh teal tint. The tree trunk in the upper right is grayish when it should be brown, but the iPhone quickly adjusts to the correct colors. Overall, the videos are excellent from both cameras, but the DSLR footage has depth that the iPhone just doesn't have. I think it's because it's able to resolve the finer details. The final comparison is a harsh low light test. I had a small fan on the table and the micro vibrations seem to have affected the iPhone. Both cameras struggled to do video with lots of noise, but not a big surprise. The larger sensor, the DSLR, produced much better results. In the end, the iPhone is a great camera as long as you have good lighting, but once you move indoors and no longer have good natural light, you should use a flash, or take a DSLR if it's an important event. What about all those professional quality iPhone short movies? What they tell us is that content, composition, and other core basics are the most important aspects for creating great videos. The producers took very deliberate actions to get those results. They could shoot with a webcam and it would look good. That's very different than going to your auntie's 52nd birthday and snapping a few photos and videos where the sheer brute force of your camera will make a difference. I'll end with an example of how much a nice scene makes a difference. I was lucky to catch a sunset as I was riding a taxi home from the airport.